All right. So we've been talking about the next retreat that you're doing. You're going to be doing it with Tucker, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Where is he now? He's in Seattle.
I think he lives in California now. He moved within the last year from Arizona. The retreat's in Arizona.
Hmm. He has friends in Seattle. That may be why I'm uh, associating him with Seattle, because I know him through Noah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have a mutual friend in Seattle too.
Uh-huh.
So I think you're right.
Well, let one of the things that I would like to begin to use with some of my older students, and I would consider you kind of an older student now, is to revisit Anapanasati in a new perspective. And that would be sort of jacking everything up.
Okay.
All right. Jacking things up a bit. All right. What do I mean by jacking things up? Well, jacking up the sati, jacking up the noble right view, jacking up the noble right attitude, jacking up the gladdening of the mind, jacking up the experiencing of the mind, jacking up the satisfaction, jacking up the joy and the experience of uh, winning, the success, to begin to jack that up. Now, surprisingly enough, the way that we're going to do that is by jacking up the breath. This is, after all, Anapanasati. And that it is, this is actually where yoga and Buddha meet, is in the breathing and breathing techniques. That there are things that the Indians have known for thousands of years, at least 2.5, perhaps 3, about the breath that is part and parcel of Anapanasati, but for some reason we have made it all mental, and also to a degree, but a less degree, making it all emotional, and not actually paying much attention to the breathing. And so I want you to start paying more and more attention to the breath, that in fact, paying attention to the breathing is actually going to jack up the sati.
Are you talking about during sits or not during sits?
To start doing it during the sitting, the formal sitting practice, but also begin to do it throughout the day. All right. Now, the first thing that we want to talk about is energizing the blood by making a lot of oxygen or building a lot of oxygen to energize the body, to energize the brain by having a lot of oxygen. As you probably well know, that the frontal cortex uses more energy, takes more oxygen than the anterior cortex. That the anterior cortex is actually a device for survival and has been keeping us in survival mode. And that one of the qualities of survival mode is to cut down on the amount of oxygen that we have, to stop the breathing, to go into a freeze state. So, when we are in ordinary human condition, that means that we're not, I'm going to use the word vibrantly alive.
Okay.
All right. And so we're going to start working on getting you vibrantly alive.
Sounds good.
All right. Vibrantly alive means energetically alive, so that there is a lot of energy there and a lot of good feelings associated with it that normally, um, just because of the habit patterns of the mind and our society and the way that we were raised, we spend far more time in, let us say, blase or unsatisfactory feelings, feelings of guilt, feelings of doubt, feelings of fear, feelings of anxiety, all kinds of feelings like this. And we don't spend very much time uh, directly developing feeling really good. And so this is something that you can start to practice while on the sitting, but once you get into it, it should be done throughout the day. Just like sati is arising, with that sati, not just, oh, I can see my mind having wandered away. No, we want to start taking that opportunity to become vibrantly alive in that moment because we remembered to. Okay, so we know that one of the most important qualities in this list of things to do is to gladden the mind. And what we mean by that is by having really good thoughts. So in that regard, the better the thoughts we have, then the more likely we're going to get into that state of being vibrantly alive. We're literally going to talk ourselves into it. By gladdening the mind. In other words, instead of having unwholesome thoughts that lead us into unwholesome feelings, and then the unwholesome feelings keep the unwholesome thoughts going, we're going to change all of that around. We're going to start having thoughts that make us feel really good because there is an interrelationship between our thoughts and our feelings. And if you can start having really, really good thoughts, then that will bring on really good feelings. Actually, that can happen instantaneously for some people at the football stadium. Every time something good happens, and they feel really good. And every time something bad happens, they feel really bad. But they do that by thinking. And part of the thinking they have is this is my team. And I like that team. And so I like that team doing well. And then they feel good. You can use that mechanism to build yourself up to the point that you feel really, really nice. But there's also going to be a breathing component that's involved with this. We're going to get the air in so that the whole body feels vibrantly alive rather than in the normal kind of shutdown mode that we have. Now, there's a lot of different ways of breathing, but when we're not watching the breath, it tends to get very shallow. It tends to get, in other words, the body itself is lazy. And part of the reason that it's lazy is because it's unexercised. So basically, what I'm talking about now is that now is the time to actually put in a new, different kind of right effort. And that new right effort actually is a physical thing to do, to start concentrating on the breathing so that you're going to get a lot of air. Now, we normally think of the long breath as a breath that's going to fill up everything. And then we're going to let that breath out kind of as a sigh. And that breath has several qualities to it. One of the qualities is that it brings in a lot of oxygen. The other quality is that it helps to expand and eliminate a lot of the poisons that have collected into the bloodstream that can then be let out with the breath. As an easy example for a biologist like yourself, carbonic acid.
Mm-hmm.
So we begin to change the pH level of the breath simply by getting out all of the carbon dioxide, never mind all the broken down amino acids that are there too, so that the pH level of the blood changes back more to neutral. Another quality that happens is that all of those poisons, like the amino acids that have been broken down and just laying around in the blood, and sometimes laying down around the cells, but are not being picked up by the blood because the blood already has quite a lot of stuff. And so we're now going to be using the blood to actually clean out the whole body. And by doing so and making it oxygenated, it becomes tingly and vibrantly alive. Folks who practice yoga, Matt, for instance, he's really in on this. He knows exactly what I'm talking about because he can see this in a relationship.
Sounds like hyperventilating, is it not?
We'll call it that if you like, though the word hyperventilating does have the quality of negativity to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is normally when people are hyperventilating, they hyperventilate and then they go into bad feelings. And so the bad feelings are really bad. That there are techniques that are known. One of them would be rebirthing, to where they go in and take a lot of air over and over and over again for a long period of time, and then all kinds of emotional stuff will come up. Well, we're not going to be working with that kind of emotional stuff. We're going to be working with the kind of emotional stuff with, wow, this is wonderful. Woohoo! Wow, I like this. Okay. To really experiencing things as being vibrantly alive. Now, there are various ways of breathing. Let's start with one that is the other extreme of the normal shallow breath that people take, and that would be the panting of a dog. Now, when dogs pant, they normally are more, let us say, physiologically interested in cooling the body than they are in breathing. And so the breathing there is very shallow, but it's very fast. And it has to do with taking moisture out of the mouth and out of the lungs for as a cooling agent, evaporative. And so that kind of breathing looks like this. Watch closely. That's normally done with the mouth. So the mouth gets dry. Then there's a little bit longer breath that we're going to work with for just a moment. That some people, in fact, my good friend Dhammarato, Anapanasati teacher here at Watso and Moke, calls this kind of breathing actually Anapanasati step 2. He calls this kind of breathing the short breathing. And that we would, in normal language, we would call this out of breath breathing. Okay, when people try to catch their breath, that means that they can slow it down long enough to where they can start to talk. To where with this kind of breathing, if it's done automatically, then that's because the body feels out of breath, that the pH is so out of balance in the blood that a lot of breathing is necessary. Okay, and you have actually climbed a hill, or you have run, or you have played sports, so that you have been out of breath before. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you know exactly what kind of breathing we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's do some of it for a little while. All right, let's do it for a minute or two. So follow my lead. Keep going. Keep going. Come on, let's go. Keep going, but now start noting what's happening. How does your lungs feel? How does your chest feel? Getting tired?
Yeah. Everything feels warm.
I can tell it's hard for you. Come on, let's go. Let's do it. Be a yogi for a moment. There you go. Keep going. Heavy. Okay, let's settle down. All right, now go to not an ordinary breath, but a relaxed breathing. But take note. How do you feel? What's your body feel like?
Everything feels hot. Warm.
Okay.
Tingly.
All right. That's what we're looking for. How often do you allow that tingling feeling?
Not often.
All right. Would you call that tingling feeling closer to being vibrantly alive?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So so we're going in the right direction.
But I feel like if I did that for another minute, I might pass out though.
But you're not passing out.
Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like if I did it for another minute, I would be.
Well, you know why you feel like passing out? Is because the blood is so oxygenated that a lot of half-spent fuel is being spent. In other words, what we're saying is that the glucose levels are changing and the blood uh, pressure is reducing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you stood up suddenly, you might blank out because the blood pressure is so low that now the mind is starved from oxygen. But so long as you're sitting comfortably and doing this breathing, you're not going to pass out.
Okay.
You've got enough blood pressure going there,
All right.
but it does feel unusual.
Yeah.
Right. But does it feel good?
I think so. It feels better now than while I was doing it. It feels really good now.
Okay. So this is what we mean by jacking things up. Now, it's not necessary for you to do this kind of breathing that often, but this kind of breathing that I would call out of breath breathing, I would also call it as part of the long breath, mostly because it's most conscious. But there is another kind of breathing that you can do that will build up the oxygen and will purify things, but it's a longer breath, but it does have the quality intentionally of filling up the body with air.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this would be Anapanasati step one. Bango. All right. So start watching me, and then you can start joining me with it. The quality is to fill up from the diaphragm through the chest, or the chest and diaphragm together, doesn't matter, but it's going to be a little bit longer in breath as opposed to a very quick diaphragm breath that a musician would take between notes, like, all right, that's not the kind of breath, but it's a little bit longer than that. And the quality of this breath that I just took, on the end, I'm speaking when I'm doing the out breath, but watch that in breath again, so that the chest fills up completely. The lungs fill up completely. The diaphragm drops completely. Even the shoulders go up. It's a really deep, full breath. And then the out breath is going to be even longer, but not so much longer. And it's going to have the quality of a sigh. It's going to have the quality of a let go. So that you actually empty things out. All right. That's Anapanasati step one. Now, almost every meditation teacher that I know who even knows about this does not give this to the beginning student. This is more of an advanced technique because it takes effort, the kind of effort that most students are not willing to put in, but you've already proven to yourself and to me that you're willing to put in the effort that it takes. Now, just like visiting a gym, there's going to be a little bit of soreness in the chest, but that soreness is coming from the fact that you're building up muscle. You're building up an ability. You're building a skill. And that skill is the skill to breathe. Breathing well enough that it makes you vibrantly alive, rather than in half shutdown or in full shutdown mode, the way that most people live their whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
And the more often that you remember throughout the day to take a deep breath, the better. And in fact, for the really advanced student, just one breath's enough. All I have to do is remember to take a deep breath, and everything is shining after that. But for you, it might take a few 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 breaths of this kind should oxygenate the body. But if not, then go for some of that short breathing and do that for a little while to really get the body oxygenated.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because this oxygenation is going to be there for you when you start to develop real pity,
Mm-hmm.
real satisfaction that's based in success. I can do this. I'm the lion. And it really has the quality of being energized, and the breathing is the way to do that. This is yoga breathing. This is actually pranayama. And that anyone who does yoga knows that they use the breath with the yoga through their movements. Here, we're not necessarily interested in so much movement. We're interested in getting the body really energized.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? This is Anapanasati. That's the name of the practice. Is breathing while we're developing these other skills. Now that we've gotten some of these other skills in development, we're going to add this whole jack up factor, so that we're going to add more joy. We're going to add more gladdening of the mind. We're going to add more good thoughts. We're going to add more effort. We're going to add more right breath, deep breathing to get the body oxygenated. And also, we're going to work with that change of attitude from, oh, this is hard work, into, wow, this is really great.
So when do you do it during the day, or when should I do it during the day? Is any time? Oh,
I just did it.
so
You can
is it
do this while
anchored
you're
to
talking to
anything, or
people. while people want is if you can remember to take a deep breath when you're talking to people, you'll be a lot better off than if you forget.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't care. They don't care how you breathe. They're not watching your breath. They're thinking about what they're thinking about.
Yeah.
Okay. I do that often. Most of the students don't see it. I guess if people watch for the video, they would say, yeah, that's right. He's taking a really deep breath often.
Mm-hmm.
Feels good. Keep the body oxygenated. Keep it up. Keep it bright.
Okay, yeah. So in a day, you do this probably thousand times.
Well, let's start for 200.
Okay.
Let's start for 20 and start building from there. But especially every time that when you're in formal sitting practice and the mind wanders away, then we're going to go through an entire sequence of events. Number one, we're going to catch it. We're going to catch it in that go wink away. Never mind, start again. So we're going to never mind the fact that the mind has wandered away. We're going to start again. How are we going to start? Aha, I caught you is already gladdening the mind. It's already thrown that hindrance out, and now we've got practice on the mind. And so we take that deep breath, and while we're taking that deep breath, we can begin to say, I'm going to feel good. This is a time to feel really good. This is a time to become energized, vibrantly alive. And you can do this while you're driving. You can do this anytime. Take those deep breaths. But
Mm-hmm.
especially when we're on the sitting, when we're sitting, we're going to intentionally start doing it a lot. So we're going to intentionally bring the mind up to that tingling place. We're going to make the body vibrantly alive through that tingling because you've got a huge amount of oxygen in the body that you don't normally keep. That's not a normal level of oxygen, but you're going to start making it that normal because you're going to be oxygenating the body more and more often. Okay. Now, here's something that is kind of a side point, but it helps us to understand that most of the benefits of exercise can be had with the breathing. That most of the benefits of humans exercising is because it makes them breathe. There are other things that make them breathe. And in fact, you probably know from your professional background that once the doctors figured out that smoking was bad for people, that it took them more than 20 years to get anywhere with the public to make smoking no longer socially acceptable. Do you know why? Because the tobacco industry fought hard, and now the same tactics that they're using, half truths, is what the oil industry is using to keep us from moving into uh, uh, cleaner energy. Okay, so what were the half truths that the doctors, or excuse me, the tobacco industry was using? Was a piece of research that they conducted over and over again, and that is that people who smoke less than 5 cigarettes a day or 5 cigarettes a day tend to be healthier on average than normal people. And that was what kept them going for all of those years. They could prove that over and over again. I know I was living through that time back in the 60s, 70s. That was their advertisement is that people are actually healthier by smoking when they smoke a few of them. Basically what was going on is that when people are smoking, they do a deep breath. They'll take a drag and then they'll that was why. But the tobacco itself was detrimental, so that after 5 or more cigarettes a day, the accumulative bad effect overtook the good effect of the breathing. So if we can take those 5 cigarettes a day, except we don't need the cigarette, what we need is the drag
Mm-hmm.
to start breathing. There's another example that is useful, and that is that years ago, the Navy SEALs had a big problem because their training was so rough that only 25% of the people who were qualified to do the SEAL training would pass the SEAL training. They did not want to change the SEAL training, but they did want to increase the success rate. And so they started doing some research and worked around, and they found out that breathing was the issue. And so you can imagine this recruit at dawn in the swamps in South Carolina with crocodiles and snakes and all of that kind of stuff in this swamp. And he's up to his neck in that swamp with his rifle in the air. And what is he thinking about? He's thinking about, this is dangerous. I don't like this. This is scary. I don't like this. My arms are hurting. The water is cold, and I want out of the SEAL training, and I'm about to quit. Right? But in fact, if he is doing deep breathing while he's doing that, in other words, you start paying attention to his breath, then his body is going to warm up. His arms are not going to feel so tired because they're being refreshed. And the fear level goes down and his thoughts get better. And with the SEAL training, with adding breath and only the breathing, they increase their success rate from 25% to 50%, which was remarkable, and that was satisfying for them. I imagine they could have increased it better, but they got what they were looking for out of it. That they know that the breathing is most important. But people, when they're in those, let us say, war scenarios, that in the actual war scenario, they may have enough adrenaline pumped up. They may have enough going for them so that they're not in that washout mode like they got when they were in training. In other words, now they're really out on a mission. Now we got to go do something. And not only that, but they've got the success of having gone through the training. And as a recruit, they don't have it. So the breathing will take them through that. Now we look at all sports, and most music has to do with breathing. And yet within meditation, even though we call it mindfulness of breathing and we call it anapanasati, nobody pays any attention to the breath. And I just don't understand that. Except here at Watch the One Monk, we talk about it. It's important. You got to breathe. But it's not taught in the retreats. Well, unless it's an advanced retreat. In fact, I've had advanced students say that Dhammarato does teach this strong breathing. So I'm letting you in on one of the deeper details. The question is, do you have the right effort to practice?
Yeah.
Do you have the right attitude to practice? Do you have the right view? That breath is important, because once you start the breathing, once you start working with that to reoxygenate the body and getting it going, that's when we can really begin to feel good. That's where the systems like rebirthing and doing that hyperventilation, they're doing it raw, which means that then raw emotions are going to be coming up. For you doing these breathing techniques after the long practice that you put in for anapanasati and gladdening the mind and feeling good, that's the kind of feelings that you're going to be working on bringing up. The very highest quality, best feelings you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how good can you feel? Take a deep breath and start feeling good. Now, you don't have to make a lot of noise. I was making noise with the breathing just to show you what we're doing. But in the meditation retreat hall, you don't have to make a lot of noise to get a lot of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying to call attention to yourself at all, but you can go right there in the meditation hall, not making any noise and getting your mind just.
So does that work better to do that than just a couple long breaths all the way in? You had made.
Oh, I've given you some toys to play with. It's your job to play with these toys, to learn them, to experiment with them, to play with them so that they make a great advantage for you. Practicing this anapanasati is of great fruit, is of great, enormous advantage. And the words that I'm using actually come out of the sutta itself. This is the Buddha's words. I'm going to teach you anapanasati, breathing. This actually, that breathing then will help to get to solidify the jhana factors, especially that piti, or what we mean by really feeling good. Well, tingling alive, that brings up those kind of feelings. And if you really like it, oh wow, that feels so good. Now you're becoming a master of your meditation rather than a participant.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the right way to practice, is to get the breathing going. And you can do that in the meditation retreats. But don't make a big deal out of it. And you can tell Tucker about our conversations and what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And also tell him the benefits. Don't tell him in the sense of asking him questions about it, because I'm not sure if he knows or not.
Mm-hmm.
But you can introduce it to him in the sense of, well, this really feels good. This really brings up the joy.
Mm-hmm.
This,
Does it help with focus, or it's just?
it certainly does. And here's how. If you've got more energy, if you've got more frontal cortex going with a lot of oxygen, of course you're going to be able to focus better.
Mm-hmm.
Then, in fact, when people are reading, let us say late at night, and they're reading, and then they come tired and get sleepy, mostly it's because they're not breathing. If they take a short break and go to the bathroom and get their breathing going again, then they can come back and get back into the book.
Mm-hmm.
Then, in fact, you can practice that while you're laying in bed at night. Instead of letting the breath go to normal, you can say, okay, I'm going to take a few easygoing deep breaths, not really strong, but certainly, let us say, more intentionally done than usual. A breath
But
something like this.
but if it's oxygenating your blood, is that going to make you stay awake more?
No, not necessarily. And if you're actually oxygenating and feeling really good, then you're getting yourself prepared for a better kind of sleep. That the body is naturally going to go to sleep, but the thing that's most likely going to keep people up is worry.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't worry. Be happy. And then you can go to sleep easy.
Mm-hmm. So so before you talked about anchoring to, hand stuff, right? So
Yes.
like every time you grasp or release, right?
Mm-hmm.
So would it make sense to try to anchor this in that way, or no?
Yes, absolutely. If you're actually watching your hands, grasping and reaching, that's a good time to take a deep breath too, so that your mindfulness practices coalesce together, making
Mm-hmm.
you more unified, having more integration.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll try it.
Excellent. I hope that there's more than try. Sorry, the training that I have had, the word try is a key word. Because generally people, when they say they'll try, that means that they don't really want to do it, but they'll say that they will just to get out of.
No, I'll do it.
Okay.
And if it no, and if I succeed and if it works, then I'll keep doing it. So
Yes. Well, if it doesn't work, I'd be very surprised. If it doesn't work, call me back and we'll figure out what you're doing that's making it not work. What part of oxygen doesn't work?
no, it's funny. It makes sense. It makes sense that I can give you a boost, and it is funny that no one does it. So that makes sense to me.
It takes work. And people don't understand the value.
When you say it takes work, it doesn't seem to take any more work than anything I'm already doing, though, right? How is that more work than gladdening the
Watch,
mind? It
watch,
seems like it's
watch to
less work.
see. Watch to see if the chest becomes stronger. Watch to see if the chest is changing. Does it get sore? If it's getting sore, then you're probably doing it right.
Oh, so if it's not getting sore, does that mean I'm not doing it right?
I didn't say that because you already might have the muscles that it takes so that you could do it and not get sore.
Mm-hmm.
But in the beginning, when people start doing it, normally they experience getting some soreness. I don't get sore.
Mm-hmm.
I could. Instead of doing it for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I could do it for 10. I'd get sore.
Whoa, when you just said 2 minutes or 3 minutes, what are you referring to?
That the heavy breathing, the
So do
the
you
out
do
of
that every
breath,
day?
the out of breath. Yes. Well, not.
So
Yes, I do it on the videos with the students for one thing, but I do it other times too.
um okay, I mean, so if the goal is, yeah, so should I do that then? I mean, I'm just trying to think of, so you're saying that, yeah, while I meditate, the mind wanders off, I take a few deep breaths, for instance, oxygenate the blood, hopefully that makes me more alert, brings joy, this kind of thing, right? So that makes sense to me. It also makes sense that I might just do the what you call the step 2 in the morning or something like that.
Like I said, start to play with it. I've given you a lot of information, and there's things to play with. But Dan, the one thing that I need to make sure that you understand mostly is the change in attitude. You've got to learn to become a lion, to become joyfully successful.
Mm-hmm.
That's success. And so this deep breathing is going to help you become how to say it, to be able to feel that success. Because it's actually a feeling. It's not an ordinary feeling. People don't have the feeling of success often. That in fact, what you could go so far as to say that when it does happen on that rare occasion, most people don't understand it. And so they think, oh, it's because I robbed this bank and got all this money. Now I'm feeling successful and I'm feeling wonderful. And then the money's gone. And so they say, oh, that means we got to go rob another bank in order to feel good. Now we have to, the guy, by the way, who is most likely to do that is not the guy who puts on a mask and goes into the front door of the bank with a gun. The guy who's most likely to do that works for the bank. In fact, the higher in the bank he is, the more likely he's going to be doing some shady stuff.
Uh-huh.
Because getting that hit makes him feel good. And this is why it's very, very greedy people, not so much smart or intelligent people. Sometimes it happens with intelligence, especially with the high tech, but it's mostly greed that drives people towards wealth. And the greed that they have is that greed for that really good feeling of success. And here we're going directly after that feeling. The kind of feeling that you would think, oh, wow, if I had so much money, I'd feel so good. No, you don't. People who have that kind of money, they don't feel good, not the way that you would think that they should feel with all of that money.
Mm-hmm.
They wind up feeling bad instead. I offer you Donald as an example. Or Charles Koch or any of them. That the money doesn't make them feel good, no matter
Mm-hmm.
how much you have of it. But it's the getting of the money sometimes that gives us the feeling of success. And that's what we're striving for, is that feeling of success. And that success also has the quality of safety built into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that reminds me of the story of the prince and the pauper. Do you know that story?
Ooh, I think it sounds familiar, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
The little pauper, the little boy, was very streetwise. And it came to, through the events of the story, to find out that he was the lost prince. And so the royal family grabbed this street urchin and put him in royal garb and made him into a prince. But he didn't like that so much. He didn't like having a armed guard around him all the time. And so he escaped to go back to the street life because it was more satisfying than being a prince. And yet, when he was a pauper the first time, he might have thought how wonderful it was to be a prince. But after he's been a prince, he said, I don't want any of that. And this is what especially inherited wealth is all about. People who inherit a great deal of money wind up being that camel that cannot get through that eye of the needle.
Mm-hmm.
They can't do it. Why? Because they're so interested in getting their good feelings through success by manipulating the world or doing something or gaining some benefit like that. But here we're finding out, oh no, how good can you feel is up to you, just sitting there on the floor. You've got all the tools you need. You do not need a big check for $10 million to make you feel good. All you need to do is to sit there and breathe and talk yourself into how good can you feel. Because you've been talking yourself into how bad you can feel. Look how many years you've been doing that. So this gladdening of the mind is talking yourself into feeling really good. Bhante Vilamaramasa, so I have heard, talks about puppies. Think about puppies. How cute. Right, because you do. See, you thought about puppies and that big grin came on your face. Or maybe not puppies, but just the concept of puppies. But that's okay. The point is that we feel good. We intentionally give ourselves really good thoughts. And the good thought would be, I can do this. This is possible. This is the teaching of the Buddha. This is noble. This is wonderful. This is marvelous. This is the height of humanity. And so, with those kind of thoughts, and the deep breathing and the tingling will give you the feeling of great success. How high can you feel? Sometimes they call it bliss.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that the bliss is more like satisfaction, but they come together because this tingling and this rapture, this feeling of success, this feeling very, very good, then relaxes into the deep feeling of success. Ah. You can almost think of it as the in breath is the rapture, and the sukha is the out breath.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. To let yourself feel really good, to feel completely successful. So now that's time to practice that. By the way, when is the retreat starting?
It starts next Friday.
Next Friday. Okay, so you got some stuff to do before you start to retreat.
Yeah.
Got some breathing to do, got some joy to have, got some success to experience, some satisfaction to piddle with. So adding this to Anapanasati is a new level. We're going to intensify that and go for vibrantly alive.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you start practicing that on the cushion, off the cushion, whenever you can think of it. When you sit down in the chair, take a deep breath and this feels so good. And
Mm-hmm.
start practicing that deep breathing. Get the body oxygenated. Get yourself into feeling really good. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Excellent. Will you give me a call before you go to the retreat?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll see you then.
Um. Yeah, I can. Well, yeah, probably Thursday,
Okay.
but at some point. Yeah.
Because I want to hear how you're doing with this.
Sounds good.
Excellent.
All right.
Excellent. All right. Do you have any last questions?
Nope.
Okay. Well, let's boogie on down the path.
Sounds good. All right.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.